In the 1980s, two social theorists figured out what was wrong with the world and how we can potentially fix it. So what I'm going to tell you in this video is a thought that has been worming its way through my head for a while that, well, it's sort of important because we are on a precipice of I don't know, catastrophe, kleptocracy, griftocracy. We have a broken media environment. We have a political system that I don't really, no one has much faith in, at least the American political system. And probably if you're not American, your political system's probably messed up as well. I want to talk to you about these two social theorists, what they saw about the main problems that make people communicate in ways that are ineffectual, and how you can fix it. I'm not just talking, I'm not pointing at just my camera here and pointing to my digital audience. You can actually save the world in a way. You can save a piece of the world, and we can do it together. Okay, so let's talk about these social theorists. I'm talking about Marshall McLuhan and Noam Chomsky, and they wrote two very world-changing books that are still, in some ways, the best books on media theory ever written. Marshall McLuhan wrote The Medium is the Message, and he wrote some other ones as well. And Noam Chomsky, Manufacturing Consent. And you know these theories already. Even if you haven't heard their names, you know these theories. Noam Chomsky is the guy who said, essentially, that the media is controlled by centralized players, big, huge corporations that control the distribution of information through newspapers and television stations and any other way that the media get sent out. And he's talking about news, and he's talking in the 1980s. This is before the internet was like a huge thing, before social media for sure. But his theory is that these billionaires, tech moguls control everything, and they seep their ideology into their media empires, and they control the information that you get, and therefore they also control the way you think about things in general. Anytime you've ever heard that the mainstream media is controlled by billionaires, it's ultimately like Noam Chomsky's theories that framed this in a very intellectual and erudite way. And basically, if you think that like a reporter, that reporter's going after ratings, going after clicks, going after whatever, it's really Noam Chomsky's idea. Big people control the media because the media is really expensive to get out, and therefore they're locked into the ideologies of the shareholders and the capitalist enterprise to make the world the worst place that it had become in 1988. Okay, so the other guy, Marshall McLuhan, said the medium is the message. And what he's saying here, and he looks at print capital. He's talking about books from the 1800s and the 1600s and the publication of the Gutenberg Bible, literally the first book ever mass produced. And he said that the production of that book and the way the book was put out framed the way that people interacted with the world writ large, framed the way that they conceived of, again, information, because when you read a book, you consume information in book form, and that book form, the process of reading, the time it takes to read changes the way you interact with the environment. And so he pulls this forward as it doesn't matter the content of the book. It doesn't matter that it was a Bible. In Gutenberg's Bible's case, it matters the fact that it was a book, and book changed the way information moved, because now all of a sudden a lot of people could read the Bible, or at least get the Bible. I think it was in Latin, so not everyone spoke Latin. And then you move this forward to the mass production of leaflets. Thomas Paine, 1700s, move it forward. And, eventually you've got newspapers, you got television, you get, he never saw the internet happen, but you have the internet. And the point is it's not the internet that matters. It's not the content of the internet that matters. It's not the content of what you're seeing on television that matters. It's the fact that you are televisioning. is there's the fact that you're internet-ing that has reformed society in a way that the information has, the way you get that information changes your mind. So those are the two big theories. And in some ways, they seem like they're in opposition. Right? Because Noam Chomsky is talking about the content that is distributed through television and newspapers to be controlled by billionaires. And what Marshall McLuhan says, no, the technology itself altered the way we humaned because, it was our actions changed around the fact that the television was there. And it doesn't matter what the television was saying, society acted different. Okay, so when I was born, 1978, so I'm 46 years old, that time period was like the golden age of TV, right? TV was out, it was in color, it was, we saw Nixon, shortly after I was born, steps down from the presidency, everyone's sort of watching that, they're engaging, and media is very centralized in the way that Noam Chomsky would later write about, 10 years later, and but everyone sort of like interacted with that at the same time. And as we move forward in my life, I experienced the change over from television to internet. I wasn't, like everyone who's in sort of Gen X, we were internet pioneers. I was on AOL chat rooms, and I was listening to that dial-up modem sound to get onto AOL. And I was around when email was just a list of numbers. It was like you put in an IP address, not even a name to send an email. Yeah, it was the old days. And at first, we didn't really think the internet would change the nature of communication. And then, of course, it did. And then there was the rise of social media, like 2009 or 5 or so. And we have this steady decline from mainstream media to the rise of social media. And in that movement, you have tech entrepreneurs controlling everything, right? Zuckerberg pops up as one of these amazing geniuses who now came up with a great idea that people could connect on the internet and with share profiles that weren't dating profiles and be friends. And all of a sudden, communication is centralized, and we are all interneting in a way where before this we might sit around the TV, but socializing still happened in the real world. And what we have seen is this constant movement towards creating our digital avatars and our digital selves, and less interpersonal communication. And I think this is where this whole saving the world thing that I was talking about earlier is really important. Now, I don't know how old you are. If you're my age, socializing was in clubs and in real life events, sports events and things. And we've seen the narrowing into digital communities, and where you could type something and then millions of people would see you. You felt sort of famous. Even like unpopular people felt sort of famous. You had 1,000 followers on Instagram. You felt famous because all of these people saw it. It used to be, if you really wanted to get attention, you had to go through the mainstream media. That changed, and we've seen the decline of the mainstream media, which was really annoying because I'm a journalist, and I started as a journalist, and the idea was like I would write stories and I would get out to thousands of people. And those platforms, New York Times, Wired, NPR, whatever, those were important and people would trust them and go to them. And that all decayed. Whatever. We are where we are. And with social media, we have this feeling that our interpersonal interactions with, say, your neighbor, with your high school friend is actually less meaningful than the action you can take with hundreds of people, right? There's been this bait and switch. We've been conned into thinking that the fractional influence you have on your audience is actually more meaningful than just talking with one person. And yet at the same time, we also know that when we have conversations with one person, we feel more fulfilled. We feel like we're better. But somehow the social media world thinks that social media fame is more important than individual respect to other people, which leads to tribalism, which leads to this feeling that actually we have no influence on people. Like if someone likes a tweet or a video or something like that, that is what we're striving to get. But I don't know about you. If I hit like on someone's video, it doesn't mean they've changed my mind. It usually just means that I've agreed with them, which means there's no progress. There's no actual exchange of ideas. It's just like who can get the louder bullhorn. And that's bullshit. That is a bait and switch. That is forgetting what it means to be human. Like there was a time in the past, and it could be now too, that if you go out to, I don't know, your kid's soccer game and you sit next to someone and they are a supporter of a political candidate that you don't like, well, if you met them in a tweet fest, you just start slinging insults. But in the real world, you could sit next to somebody and be like, oh, I don't like your political candidate. And then you would talk about 8 other things that you actually have in common. And that commonality would bolster an actual friendship. And that is what we're missing on the internet. Most Americans now are feeling very, very lonely and isolated. And this again will come back to how you can save the world. And we're going to get there. Okay, but I want to fast forward to like another problem. Right now, when social media was going out into the world, there were a few social media networks, and right now they've been consolidating. Right, we've seen the actual networks where people are. They're really controlled by 3 entities. Right, we have Google, which owns YouTube, which is where you might be watching this. Okay, that's a couple pretty important billionaires. Meta, and that's Facebook, Threads, and Instagram, right? That's Zuckerberg's world. And then the last one is, of course, the MAGA organizations, right? And I'm really, this is Trump and Elon. This is Twitter, now X, and Truth Social. And I believe TikTok as well. So TikTok, although not owned by Trump or Elon at the moment, Elon, it looks like he's going to put in a bid. And the shutdown of TikTok yesterday was undone by Trump, and it's just very clear that it's going to be Trump talk. Like that whole empire is going to be controlled by them. And all 3 of these entities control the information that you get in a very manufacturing, consent, Noam Chomsky-esque way. They control it through algorithms, even though it's easier to distribute information now than it ever was before. These billionaires, 100 billionaires, are able to curtail the flow of information through algorithms. And because we've all internalized the idea that talking to you or talking on the internet is a one-way speech between you and thousands of people, right? You and thousands of all of your followers, they are the intermediary there, and they control ultimately communication writ large. And you have given up. We have given up on the idea of interpersonal communication. And this is a huge problem because now that the world is controlled by just a few people are able to control the political agenda writ large. And currently, as I'm recording this, Trump is being inaugurated, and he signed 100 executive orders. And to just talk a little bit what those orders are. Now, you may be pro-Trump. You might be. But I'm going to tell you what these orders are. The first is to, I'm not going to tell you all 100. Right, these are the highlights that the mainstream media is telling me about. There's an executive order to cut down on immigration, deploy troops at the southern border, build walls, to end birthright citizenship, which is crazy because that's a constitutional amendment. It's going to be very difficult to do, but who knows what machinations he's going to try. Withdraw from the Paris Climate Accords, which is. Well, that's weird. It's totally expected. But withdrawing from the Paris Climate Agreement is basically giving up on the idea that climate change is a real thing. This is at a time when we have historic fires in in Los Angeles, where Los Angeles is burning down. It's when Florida is being swamped by multiple hurricanes. And in general, I mean, the climate change is real. It is happening. That is not a hoax. And to abdicate responsibility is not a great idea. Okay, he was also like doing some DEI stuff. Like no more DEI hires, and he's going to make all official government documents male or female. Like you have to do biological gender identity. He's also, and this is super weird, that a national energy emergency. He's declaring that. And the purpose is to create more power for artificial intelligence applications, which I don't think anyone called for. Like no one out there of citizens, you who are watching this, care that we have more energy for AI. I don't think that's like a primary voting issue I never heard that in the campaign at all. But okay. He's also going to release the JFK and Martin Luther King assassination records, which I think is great. I think that's great. Good, nice job, Trump, on that one. And sort of on and on. He's going to try to enact these through executive orders. Why am I telling you about that? It's because when the power is totally controlled by the billionaires, by the technological platforms that we have, we abdicate our ability to have influence and to create a better world. Now, in the years past, before I grew up, interpersonal communication, interpersonal organization was the only way to get things done in the first place. Like you wanted to raise awareness on something, you put a flyer up on some trees and some telephone poles, you got people to meetings, there were churches, there were community groups, and it was just de facto, that is where you would meet, interact with people. We have abandoned our responsibility and our ability to influence politics. So here's how you can start to change the world and like actually change the world. It's by caring less about social media. And more importantly, it's about meeting your neighbors. It's about having interpersonal relationships that are meaningful. It's about starting clubs. It's about doing things with other humans where instead of having a fractional interaction with hundreds, thousands, tens of people, you have a one-on-one interaction. If everyone who watches this video, or preferably, I'm not that famous, but if like everyone out there starts working together to just meet people, to leave cookies on your neighbor's doorstep and say, hi, I'd like to meet you, because you may not know your neighbors. Maybe that's a start. You should have a club. If you're a man, you should start a men's group, because men are the most lonely of all of them, because women are light years ahead at least in my experience, women are better at meeting other people than men. But women, you guys also need to meet other people. We need to have one-on-one interactions with people that matter, so we share ideologies instead of our solipsistic, internal-looking feelings that we distribute onto the internet like a broken superego or an out-of-control id. Meet other people, make friends, and that is the way you save the world. Because otherwise, you're going to feel out of control. You're going to look at the inauguration, or you're going to look at, if you're conservative, you're going to be like, oh no, Biden is, whoever's next, whoever the next Democratic person is going to be, you're like, oh no, I'm out of control. He's doing things, or she's doing things that I don't like. Over the next 4 years, everyone sort of who is on that broad category of the left is going to feel out of control. And you're never going to have any ability to influence anyone else's opinion unless you have friends. And so that's how you save the world. From Poke Bear LLC in Denver, Colorado, this was Scott Carney's Back Channel.